because we are live.
Wow.
So hello, everyone. Welcome to Global Women for Wellbeing's Wine and Tea Wednesdays. I'm Mim Senft, CEO and co-founder, and we are delighted to have you with us today. We hope you grabbed a beverage and taking a nice deep breath. I did want to say before we jump in that next week is International Women's Day. So we just want to give a big shout out to all the women around the world at every level that are making positive change. And we want to invite you to take a moment and recognize a woman in your life. We all need to be supported. Too often we're out there in the trenches doing the work. And so I just want to take a moment and thank the three amazing female leaders that are on with me today. Thank you for your leadership, and thank you to the GW4W team. And we look forward to working together for a better future. So with that, I'm going to turn the conversation over to London lead and CEO of Personal Touch Fitness, Chris Andrews. Great to be with you, Chris.
Thank you so much. But it's actually Dion that's hosting.
Oh,
and
Dion!
Co-host.
All right, so let me take it, Mim, whilst we're acknowledging everyone, as usual, we don't get tired, we don't get weary in acknowledging you and the brilliant work that you and the board are doing to provide this platform and touch women's lives all around the world. Like, this is the month to celebrate women, and we honestly celebrate you and your leadership. You are an amazing addition to all of our lives, and we just really want to know you to know how much we appreciate you and the board. So mwah, to you.
Mwah.
And welcome to all of our viewers for another week. We are hurtling through series 4. We're already talking about series 5, but we'll talk about that another day. But welcome if you're watching live or if you're watching on the replay. We really are excited to have you here. We're here because of you. We are here to serve you. So although we don't get to interact with you very much during the broadcast, we really love you to use the comment section wherever you're watching this. You know, tell us what you think. Let the chat be your virtual voice. We really want to hear what you have to say, and we'll go back and read and comment on what you have to say afterwards. Right, well, today we're talking about all things workplace wellness, and we've got a really special guest. But before I tell you about her, let me introduce formally our co-host today, who's Chris Andrews. Woo-hoo! I celebrate you, Chris. Chris is a GW4W advisory board member, and she's our very own London lead for GW4W. We love her dearly. She's a founder and co-founder and CEO at Personal Touch Fitness. And she's passionate about corporate and personal health and well-being. So Chris, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on with all of you.
You can feel the love in the room, can't you? And it's genuine. All right, well, let's get into today's show. Our guest today is Nuzhad Chagan. I hope I've said that right, Nuz. So Nuz is the founder at the Workplace Wellbeing Alliance and a holistic wellbeing strategic advisor. She's passionate about helping business leaders to support their people to bring their whole selves to work and bring a true sense of belonging. I'm sure we're going to be hearing more about that later on. So welcome, Nuz.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. So thank you so much for having me. It's really a place where we're empowering women and really taking the conversations forward. So I'm very honored.
Yeah, and we know that you're all about that too. So let's just dive right in. That this time goes so quickly, so let's just go for it. So I want to ask you first and foremost about your work with Ikea. Now, I know you cut your teeth in the world of workplace well-being at Ikea, and I know that Ikea's got a special place in your heart. And so I want to know, what did you learn there, and how has it shaped the focus of your work right now?
Thank you for that, because yes, IKEA continues to be with me. But the mantra in IKEA was around to create a better everyday life for the many people. And I think that has been installed in me from the very start, because it really aligned with the values that I had. I think whether you worked in a unit in IKEA, you were always close to people, and you learned the importance of compassionate and authentic leadership and how to be that effective leader. And that you have potential within you, should you choose to use it and to grow and develop. So I learned a lot around relationships, and that they matter to really solidify anything that you're wanting to achieve. I also think without your people, you would not have customers or growth. And it didn't matter in IKEA whether you were the IKEA store manager, whether you were a co-worker. It was only together that we would be able to deliver and succeed. So I really learned how important culture, values, and leadership coming together are. And they need to be aligned in order for something to work. Now, I could sit here and speak for ages on it, but I think at the core of it is, I think I learned so much, but I learned how to be that leader in order to be able to deliver many of the strategies that I am delivering today, but also being able to challenge the conversations, because that's important. And IKEA allowed you to do that. I mean, Ingvar used to always say—
What was your role there, Nuz? What was your role there?
So in IKEA, I was the health and well-being lead. And then prior to that, I worked in different units in Dublin, Birmingham, service office in London, up north in Gateshead. So I had the opportunity to really travel and be part of different things.
Wow. That is really, really interesting. It gives you a real diverse vision, doesn't it? Working all over. It's so good, that experience. And I just wanted to ask you, you talk a lot about financial well-being. With all the other aspects of the workplace well-being, why did you decide to place such a heavy emphasis on the financial wellness in work now, especially as we move toward this past pandemic?
I think as the head of health and well-being at IKEA, of course, I started off embarking on this journey to create the well-being strategy for IKEA, for the 11,800 co-workers that are in UK and Ireland. And the first thing you start anyway is you need to start doing your research, really understanding the data points and having conversations to understand, what do we have, where are we now, and where do we want to go to. So I had already done a lot of work understanding the points and what people were talking about. I think where everybody else was talking about mental health, I was trying to understand what's the root cause, what's causing the mental health. And I went dug deeper and looked at, the ONS data was saying 66% of people were saying they're in debt, they're just struggling, So I looked at market data, and then I looked internally, and 60% of them were saying, we don't have the financial well-being tools. So they were lacking the financial literacy and education. There's so much out there, but how do you simplify it? And then I was also listening to conversations of, what happens when my washing machine breaks down? I'm going to a payday loan. I'm getting myself into debt. So this is where it's really vital to really pick all the data together and understand the story it's telling you. And that's why I went after financial wellness, because I thought people in the UK are just bombarded with credit cards and payday loans. It was advertised at one point until, the government got involved and said, you can't do this. So people were already in that place, and it was just impacting their physical and mental health, because sleepless nights, etc. And what we're seeing now is that has actually escalated even more. So when you look at what's trending at the moment, Financial Times are talking about financial literacy and inclusion. You have a whole lot of wealth management firms that are also looking at financial well-being. So it's really coming up, because with furlough, many people weren't earning as much as they were going to be earning. They've turned to universal credit. Universal credit in the UK is not covering all that they need to. Some people are actually, you just need to look at some of the comments and posts on LinkedIn. People are saying, I've only got 1 month left before I lose my house. I need a job. So I guess in IKEA, I was a bit, ahead of the curve, because I said, no, let's look at what's causing some of these issues, and really broke it down. So I think coming out of the pandemic, it's going to have a long-term impact. I'm also worried about young people that are not financially, literate. They don't understand how to even manage they overdraft. I mean, I have these workshops and I'm seeing that coming through. So how do we really look at financial literacy and inclusion? And that one size does not fit all. It's not everyone that knows how to manage those finances. So really, that's where I guess my emphasis has been a lot on financial well-being.
Yeah, and that
I
really
mean,
brings,
go on, Lim.
yeah, it just brings up a thought for me about, particularly now with the lockdown and people, not having emergency funds. I mean, I know that, by comparison, the US, you see a lot of conversation around, our 401k programs here and like saving for that or doing these things. And I think you're spot on here about, there's a step way before this that, and so I really appreciate you sharing this piece. My question to you is, do you see any in the data? Are there differences by demographics? Are there differences by gender? Is it financial wellness for all, or are there some of those nuances in there?
No, there definitely are nuances. I think when you look and dig deeper, and there's not been a lot of work done on it. So when you look at mental health, there's been loads done. There's loads of indexes, there's loads of data, but on financial well-being and workplace poverty, what you are seeing is a huge emphasis on there are women in the workplace and they are struggling and they are the one getting into debt. The average household saving is £100. Well, when washing machine breaks down, that's £300.
Yeah.
So in relation to all of these things, it is, and it's not any more of looking at a certain type of demographic. And often there's profiling, and everybody thinks, oh, it's a family basic that's going to be struggling with money. Well, actually, no, there is no discrepancy. We've got people that are highly paid and not manage their finances in the right way.
Yeah.
They on credit cards, etc., and now are in knee deep in debt. So absolutely, there is that difference, which is why the emphasis needs to be on how do we improve financial literacy, especially from now moving forward, amongst women, amongst young people. And there's a lot that's going to come together to influence government to put in some actions when it comes to this, because we can't go on like this.
Well, do you know, I was, as you talked about, like with the government and stuff, I don't think there's enough at the secondary school level that children are being educated on how to actually work their finances. And if they're not taught by their parents, or their parents just spend the last penny that's in their pocket, and they see that and they grow up with that, and they're not getting it in school, they're going to learn the same habits, so it's so important that they get it in school, don't you think, Nuz?
Yep, absolutely. And this is why organizations like my bank are working and focusing on this young demographic to really start educating young people about how to manage money and what does it actually mean to be responsible for money. This is the first country I think I've come to where I've seen young people being given credit cards like they're given candy. Honestly, maybe now it might be different, but in Sweden and in South Africa, you had to work really hard to get, your pocket money or to get access to any money. Whereas here, a young person going from school into university is bombarded. Here you go, here's £1,000 for an extra overdraft on your card. But we haven't told you it's 34% APR. It's just in the small print. So, it's that transparency of communication and actually the scenarios of, if you do this, this is the repercussion. You're going to come out of university 4 years down the line with 50 grand worth of debt. Are you prepared for that?
It's so important, isn't it? It's so important because on one hand, there's this big drive towards mental health, mental wellness. And then on the other hand, there is this really important aspect of our lives that we don't teach people about. And in fact, we are advertising and the way that we just, make credit sexy, and the way that we consumerism is so buoyant. It's just that it kind of goes against everything that's trying to happen with the whole wellness movement. It just feels like they're at loggerheads to me. I was really surprised to. I just hadn't made the connection between financial, and workplace poverty. I love that term. I'd never made the connection between workplace poverty and mental ill health. But of course, it's obvious.
Yeah, it is. And this is where part of my work has been, is really flying the flag of saying, you know, when we talk about mental health, we need to understand the root cause and be more preventative, rather than only trying to put sticky plasters on something and thinking it's going to stick. Because actually, we are not only looking short term, we need to be thinking long term. So in all the strategies as well, and anything that I'm advising on, is we have short term plans. Yes, I understand, but always think long term, because all of this is associated to productivity. And if you are bringing in, if I think of young people who are stressing at the moment, their mental health has increased by 80% as a result of what's happening in the pandemic. Everybody thinks it's because of the virus. It's not. It's because they're worried about their futures. Will I get a job? Will I be employed? Will I be able to buy a new home? Well, actually, if we are realistic, that's the generation that are going to come out and have to pay the heaviest in taxes down the line.
Right.
So
Well,
how do we prepare them from now for what is coming?
Yeah.
And this
and
is
I
where,
think,
yeah. Sorry,
so it's the pandemic, and I also look back to the financial meltdown. So
yes.
anybody who is 18, 20, like, they've now been through two major crises. And, you know, and I know our young leaders have talked, you know, they've touched a little bit on this, but I also just want to point out that our original white paper connects financial stability and financial well-being directly to caregiving, which directly impacts women as leaders. So I just so appreciate, Naz, that you're, you know, pushing this message forward. And, you know, it also gets to the pay gap, because you can talk about financial literacy, but if I make more money than someone else, that's a whole different conversation. You can tell this person to save because they can make more money. But if I'm living paycheck to paycheck and you're telling me, well, you just have to figure out how to save, and you literally are not making enough. I know in the US, this is a huge conversation around minimum wage. And what does that mean? So I know you have more of a global view. I'd be curious as to how you see that fitting into this conversation.
I think at the moment in the UK, I'd like to take more of a positive stance in that those conversations are being had. I think the gender pay gap reports that are coming out are almost naming and shaming a lot of the large enterprises that have not been thinking about it. More, I'd like to think we're moving towards it in, you know, in a better direction. But you're absolutely right. You know, there's still more to be done, and having those conversations. And often when we talk about this workplace poverty, you're seeing women take more of the responsibility for children, or they primary caregivers, and then you have this pay, you know, the gender pay gap. So, you know, you're absolutely right in terms of that. I think where sometimes I do see it is have people join the dots. Do they really see workplace poverty, and do they understand, you know, the strains and struggles that come with everything along that line? So I think this is where then it's to keep on being the cage rattlers that we are, to be able to say, you know, this is realistically what is happening. And I think even when I look at some organizations, they're so detached from the workforce, they making decisions at the top level without actually talking to the bottom level, or actually getting that. They say, oh, we've done a survey. Yeah, but have you spoken to people? Because a survey is one thing. I may interpret the question in a different way and answer it depending on how I interpret it. But when you have a conversation, someone opens up stories, and that's where I think it makes a difference. Is in Ikea, they used to say to us, come away from your ivory tower.
Yeah.
Well said.
Well, and the other thing is with surveys, it's the viewpoint of that person at that given time and what they're feeling at that given time. And like you said, now the conversations like these and in the corporations need to be had face to face, and have those people from the ivory tower come down and really talk eye to eye, and have those see eye to eye, and really have those conversations, so they really can understand and feel what their employee is feeling. So important.
What else do leaders have to do to expand our awareness around all of this? and especially in terms of employee health and well-being agenda? Like, what are one or two key things that need to be included in any strategy to make a positive change?
I think the primary thing I think in answering this question is that well-being is everyone's responsibility and not one size fits all. I think too often the perception is that well-being and that whole agenda is an HR person will take full responsibility. They will build the business case. They'll, create the bring in the data. And also this understanding the lack of seeing it in relation to their actual business and the productivity. So I think it's managing expectations. I think also that, a workshop here and a workshop there on an ad hoc basis doesn't mean you're going to succeed. It's about transformational behavioral change. So leadership needs to take accountability for that. But also at the same time, I think it's leading through example, the legitimacy, authenticity, and compassion come in again, and expanding the awareness around how your communication is reaching your people, because one size doesn't fit all. I can give you an example within councils, for example. Some people are not desk bound. We've got people who I consider frontline workers, the ones that are taking the waste, the ones that are doing the recycling. Well, how do you reach them? What works for them? Not what works for you, because apparently, an email here and I've sent an email. Oh, I put it on the intranet. I've done my work. No, actually, it takes more than that to make a change. And I think that's where it's about being brave. It's about chief executives also taking responsibility, coming out and speaking. Again, from what we can see is the highest engagement for health and well-being has come when the chief executive has actually come out and said, this is how I am, a simplified message, and this is what I think you need to do. So I really think they need to do that. But the key thing is that association, that well-being impacts the bottom line. And if productivity goes down, and people are disengaged or burnt out or stressed out, telling them to just sit on a cushion and breathe isn't going to help. So understand really where that balance is and how important it is. And it's really key that to make that positive change, people in businesses, leaders, need to actually see and treat their people as they would their customers. They put so much time and effort into customers, in treating them in the right way. You need to be doing it with your people.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say the key thing is really, change your mindset and take responsibility.
Yeah, I mean, people are the key in corporations, and the leadership team need to understand that and really put their time into these people.
Well, it gets to, I sometimes have a real issue with calling your workforce human capital versus,
I never use that word.
right? But it gets used a lot. I know everybody's going, but because again, it is that humanness. And I really appreciate, Naz, that you talk about communication and leadership. You touched on leadership storytelling. That, and I know, we happen to know each other, and knowing that you are also a very data-driven person. And I think when business people hear, oh, storytelling, these pieces, but it's, 100% agree with you that when leaders marry their data to these stories and this understanding, and I know that, this is, kind of the core of where a lot of your work is, that you can start to see transformation happen. And I'm just curious about, because it's always wonderful for people to hear success stories, right? Well, okay, this is all theoretical, but so is there a story you can share, like as a leader, like something that a leader did at IKEA that really stood out for you, that made a difference for the population?
Yeah, I think coming away from IKEA and just giving some inspiration from other leaders I've come across, I think, I'm really proud of the work. She's a friend and I consider a colleague. It's Dr. Sabrina Robinson from Essex County Council, an extraordinary woman in her own right. But I think she really has delivered on that. And I think this is where she brought about probably a big step for a council, because in the UK, they can be quite bureaucratic and quite, the top stays at the top. And, it's just that hierarchy in bureaucracy, I find in the UK. It's not in Sweden like that. But the CEO, sent out a weekly kind of just a personable message. And she said, what we saw was, a high level of engagement that we had never seen before. It was in the 80%. And I think that shows success, in some of the things that they have done, where they've said, giving the tools to individuals, but empowering individuals to also take responsibility for their own well-being, because it can't all be on an employer. So empower your people to take individual responsibility. Empower your middle managers as well with the right support as well, because a lot gets put onto middle managers. And then leaderships as the employers have a responsibility. And when you can get those three elements, to a better place, you can actually see this value on investment. And that's where I take a lot of, at the moment, inspiration, because I've seen it in a big council that has 7,500 employees, and they've managed to make a dent in this wellbeing agenda. It's not just a strategy sitting in a drawer in the next 5 years. It's got all the elements that actually say, this is what we're committed to do, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to make our leaders walk the talk, not just talk it, they're going to walk the talk.
So it just makes all the difference. It makes all the difference when good leaders really connect with their people. I remember a woman that I worked with in midwifery. I made a really big mistake. I really it was a big mistake. There was no two ways about it. There was a clinical incident and I had made a mistake. And so I had to go and see her. And I remember she sat me down and said, Dion, you've really messed up. But she said, I'm on your side, and that whatever happens, I'm on your side, and we're going to get through this. And, she was really professional with the whole thing. There was a investigation, all of that. But, those words right at the beginning made the whole thing like a different experience altogether. And there was no compromise. We looked at what had happened really critically, but those few words right at the beginning really changed the game for me. And I just realized just how important it is for us to treat each other like human beings, isn't it?
I think just on that point, I think if there was a leader I would pick out of IKEA is an exceptional leader in all capacity. I think I'm her biggest fan. Marsha Smith, she's been the retail manager for IKEA in Canada. She is now one of the market area managers for the UK as a retail manager. I have had the privilege of working with her in Birmingham and in Dublin. And I can tell you, she showed the return on investment when you take the time for people. In every store I worked with her, we had always positive growth in terms of commercial growth. I don't remember a time that I didn't have plus 16% growth, but that was because she would walk the shop floor and she would go to the person that was on the front entrance and ask them how they were and find out what they knew, because they would see things that she wouldn't see. They would see the customer walking in and what was the experience. And she invested most of her time in people, because that's what I learned and got in terms of my leadership style, what I aspire to do, where I really solidify this message of I want to create a better everyday life for the many people. It comes from her, possibly, because I saw her walk the talk, not just, just say, oh, it looks really good on a piece of paper. She actually lived by what she said.
And it's that human connection as well, that human connection, and know that you feel valued. I think that's so important.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, when we talk about inclusion, it's that sense of belonging and purpose, and that's what makes people work better when they get the recognition.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, our time is coming up again. We could talk for hours.
I know.
Listen, I'm going to ask just one last question just to wrap up. This has been incredible, and we thank you so much for your time. But we know that the Prime Minister, had our plan, our 4 stages of getting back to the country opening, and that date is the 21st of June, and we hope we can get there. But as people start to go back to work slowly, what do you feel that women should really prioritize to ensure their well-being at work?
I think first and foremost, I would say to take the time to build your own resilience and take that responsibility. It's around a big value I have around give and take responsibility. I think it's to encourage you to think about what are your needs, what are your fears, what are your thoughts. You know, suddenly we won't be able to do the ironing and the washing during the day. But, you know, it doesn't matter to have an honest conversation with your manager, because again, it's about, we're not going to go to the norm. Australia has said it. The people are not going back, no matter what the Prime Minister says. I can tell you, the people will speak eventually. So it's really to address things like that. You know, the fears. Is the quality of the air going to be okay in offices? So as leaders, as employers, are we making sure all the elements are ready to bring back? Is it safe to bring everyone back? Just bring it into phases and think about what the impact is going to be, because what you do now will have an impact on whether you survive the next coming year. Be very careful, because it was the same as when we started the pandemic. Those employers that didn't take the time to look at the mental health of their people struggled. So think before you do anything. But as women, I would say is, you know, we can thank the pandemic for a lot of things. It's time to stand up and have a voice, because nobody's going to know what you want until you actually sit down and say, this is what I can work towards, and this is what I will give you in return. We have to own it. We can't expect anyone to give us any handouts, and that's never been the case. But also asking for what you need. You know, if you're taking care of the children and you don't want to let go of them just soon, how can you work flexibly? And ask that conversation. I think, you know, I'm really reassured by the HR people that I'm coming across. They are human. They want to do the right thing. Sometimes they just don't know what to do for you. So I think just be honest and say, and then you know where you stand, and then you know what steps to take. Some tips that I'm seeing at the moment is that some managers are actually doing a walk and talk, taking a dummy run to the office to make sure people are secure. How did you feel about that? You know, doing those check-ins. Maybe let's take a coffee in the city. You know, familiarize yourself with how this is going to work. Maybe, you know, take half a day on your first day back. You know, just, you know, we have to think about it. If someone was returning to work after long-term sickness, that's the kind of thought process we have to be thinking about, being compassionate. And take examples from the CEO of Co-op, for example. He's just leading the way in terms of saying, you know, encouraging people, thank you for being in the fight together. We can do this together, and we'll do it in the right way. So I think if people like that can be doing it, then we definitely can.
I love what you say. Find your voice, stand in it, own it, and tell people what you need. That's a really phenomenal place to end today's fascinating discussion. And I've learned so much. So thank you so much, Nuz, for joining us. If our viewers want to find out more about your work or contact you, how do they do that?
I am on LinkedIn, which is usually the best way to get a hold of me. I will put into the comment box on LinkedIn my email address and how you can get a hold of me. But usually LinkedIn tends to be where it's not a difficult name to find. So I'm one of very few that has that name. But I just want to really thank you all for giving me the platform to be able to talk passionately about what I love doing.
We hear your passion. We hear your passion. Thank you so much. We honor you.
No, thank you.
All right, well, that's it for this week. Thank you to our viewers for watching. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we really want you to let us know in the chat what you're taking away, what you're thinking, what jumped out at you. If you have any questions, we will be sure to check those out after the broadcast. And on another note, if you haven't yet, please, thanks Mim for showing this, but please download our white paper from the GW4W website. It's a really great read. It really does tie in some of the data that we've collected, and, you know, speaks really passionately and clearly as to some of the situations that we're dealing with as women who lead right now. So check that out. And if there's a topic that you want us to discuss on these broadcast, then please let us know. We really want to bring you content that's enriching and relevant. So reach out with your suggestions and let us know what you want us to talk about. And then next week's guest is Ellen O'Malley Dunlop. She's an adjunct professor at UL Law School, and we'll be discussing gender-based violence, women, and leadership. So this is going to be another fascinating conversation, and I really don't want you to miss that one. So mark it in your calendars. And really, that's it for today. So until next week, I want you to remember that great minds
sip
together.
together.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay.